Welcome to another edition of the Up and Down with my man Frank Brandt, who got the winner last week with Mr. Webb Simpson, and yours truly, Fried Egg Paulie. How's it going, Frank?
Good, man. It took some putting luck at the end there. It got a little crazy, but he tried to give it away. He hit the ball in the water on the par five and tried to piss it away. But I'm happy. I told you I was going to be really mad if I didn't. I didn't want to bet him at 14-1, but I was going to be really mad when he won because he was like top five, top five, top five. It was going to happen eventually. So yeah, I'm pretty happy. It wasn't a big win. It wasn't 100 or 50-1, but I'll take it. We made money last week, so good stuff.
Yeah, a win is a win. I actually hopped on the web train after the first round, not for the outright, but FanDuel actually offers like top 20, top 40 odds even after the first round. Wow. So believe it or not, when Webb shot, I think even in the first round, he hit the ball great, but just couldn't chip bad and then missed a bunch of short putts, right? Well, he was minus 150 to finish top 40 for the event, which I think he's done literally in his last 15 events. So I'm like, okay, well, that's an auto bet. But at the same time, he was probably 100-1 to win the event, and I didn't put anything on him at that point, which is, in hindsight, not the best move. But at that point, you weren't necessarily thinking of winning the event, but he just played amazingly perfect golf over the last two rounds to get the W.
And to be honest, I was feeling pretty bleak after round one. But
yeah.
I had Hoagie last week, so I'm like, he's two off the lead after the first round. He was 6 under or something, and I was pretty happy with that. And then Webb shot 7 under, and I was like, maybe there's a chance. And by the end of the third day, he was right there.
Yeah, so it makes it back-to-back winners. Had me having Leishman and Torrey Pines, and you knocking Webb Simpson off here at the Waste Management. So that's a good little 2 weeks for everybody that's over at EliteSportsBetting.com. Then.
And this week, I think we're gonna combine. We're gonna combine forces and both get one.
Possibly, we'll see. All right, so this week's event is the Pebble Beach Pro-Am. Do you want to talk a little bit about the event, Frank?
Yeah, Pebble Beach, well known, obviously. The Pro-Am is Phil Mickelson special. He won here last year. He's been playing horrible golf since. Pebble Beach, in at least from what I've seen and what I've witnessed with my eyeballs, I think it's probably a little bit shorter course. It's highly dependent on the wind. A little bit tighter and tiny greens on at Pebble Beach. So they'll tuck some pins, on these tiny greens, and it can be difficult to get up and down if you do miss them.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing to note for this event is that they use 3 courses, with it being a Pro-Am. So the way it's set up is basically each amateur has a Pro-Am partner, and they play with that partner for all 3 days. So they play 3 courses on Thursday, Friday, Saturday. They'll play Pebble. They'll play Monterey Shore Course at Monterey Peninsula Country Club, and then play Spyglass Hill. Pebble and Monterey are both exposed kind of on the water, and Spyglass is a little bit more inland in the trees there. So if there happens to be a forecast, we've seen this in the past, for a really high wind day, that's going to be favored towards the guys that are playing Spyglass that day because they're going to be a little bit more protected as opposed to Pebble and Monterey, which are going to be a little bit more windswept. In terms of the course setup, with it being a Pro-Am, so for the first 3 days, the courses are going to be set up easier, meaning the pins are going to be in, easier spots because the rounds are going to take 6 to 7 hours to play because you're playing in foursomes with 2 amateurs in each group, right? So you got 2 pros, 2 ams. They're not putting the pins tucked 3 paces from the edge. They're putting them in semi-easy pin locations to make sure the amateurs aren't, struggling, really bad on holes just to keep pace of play up. None of the courses are that long. Longest course is Pebble at 7,050 yards. If you're looking for a course to make the most birdies on, it's Monterey Peninsula Country Club. And then all the players are going to be playing Pebble on Sunday. The only thing to note is that it's only the top 60 in ties make the cut after 3 rounds. So as opposed to it used to be top 70, or in this case, this year, top 65, it's now top 60. So it's not as easy to make the cut. So note that, especially if you're playing DFS or something like that, it's been a lot harder to get all the guys to the cut.
Yep, and these, like you said, these events tend to take forever. The coverage is pretty spotty.
It's the worst TV coverage of any event of the year because you have 3 courses, so they barely show the other 2 courses, and then when they're showing, most of the players they're showing are on Pebble because the cameras are. They're showing more of the amateurs because it's all celebrities. You're going to watch all of Ray Romano and Chris Berman's round, and you'll see 4 shots of actual pros.
Right.
So if you have bets in or anything like that, you're going to be a little disappointed there. Your best option is just to watch the two feature groups that'll be on like PGA Tour Live. That's about all you're going to get.
Yeah, I mean it's the microcosm of golf coverage at this point, in our lives. Of we're watching Chris Berman blade shots out of bunkers on Pebble Beach as opposed to watching so and so shoot 62 at another course or something. So yeah, it's a perfect microcosm of what golf coverage is at this point.
Yeah, it's definitely not ideal. So with that being said, let's jump into kind of some of the outrights that we bet for this week. So who's the first person off the board for you this week for the outrights?
So yeah, not my most not my best edge or favorite play, but first off the board is Hovland for me at 33-1. I bet him last week. He missed the cut. Maybe we get a little bit better number here. He was kind of sloppy last week. Like we kind of thought him traveling back, maybe that had a little bit of an effect on his play. But at 33-1, the field is a bit weaker than last week, I would say, just on eye inspection, even with DJ and Cantlay at the top here. But 33-1, it just feels just a tiny bit cheap. Maybe 25-1 should be his number there for me.
Yeah, in terms of Hovland was actually the first guy just outside of me betting him to win the outright this week. So I'm only playing three guys to win. Hovland would have been my fourth. And there's a couple things that were backing Hovland, a couple things that were against Hovland. So Hovland actually won the U.S. Amateur here a couple years back at Pebble. So obviously likes the course. The only thing to note is that the conditions when they were playing that are going to be completely different than now. It was playing extremely firm and fast and was in the summertime, whereas now it's plays softer. It's a whole different golf course. So you can take it if you want, maybe a little bit edge that way. The only reason I didn't bet Hovland this week is because of how bad he is around the greens with his short game.
Yeah, he's been horrible.
He is literally in the bottom 10 in this field, and this is not a good field, by the way. 156 players with basically, half of them are being called, scrubs, to put it politely, right? He is like 142nd out of 156 players in this field in short game. And on courses, where the greens are going to be small, and if it gets windy at all, you're going to be missing greens because guess what? He's normally a good ball striker. Last week in Phoenix, he didn't hit the ball that great. And when he played two weeks prior over in the Middle East, he didn't hit the ball great like he did last year either. So if he came into this event in good form like he did at the end of last year, I 100% would have backed him because he's a green regulation machine, right? Yeah. But it's just hard to toss money at him this week knowing that he's not firing on all cylinders with his long game, which means pressure's put on his short game, and we've seen that that's his weakness of the game.
Yeah, and this bet in part is to a regression expectation, right? We think that he's going to regress back towards what he was doing, and his recent play might be indicative of what's going to happen. But in my opinion, and what I hope is that it ends up being a better price because of that, and we're going to see some better play. The field's weak, but I've got him second in driving, third in approach this week, and 132nd around the green. So it's like you said, it's tough. But if he strikes it, I think he's got a good chance to win. But if he strikes it like last week in his 2 rounds, he's not going to be there on Sunday.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I still think there's a little bit of value out there. We're seeing anywhere from like 33 to 35 for him in the market. I have him priced around 30, where he's at now. So if that number happened to get up in the 40s, I probably would play it. So it's definitely not the worst one in the world because you're getting value. There's definitely an edge there. It's just a matter of where each of us sees the edge each week, and sometimes we agree, but like this week, he's just barely off my card, so there's definitely no reason.
You guys will see my card this week. Just a couple futures. There's not much there. I don't think in value this week.
Yeah. And so we're talking about that. So I'm playing 3 guys this week. First guy I'm playing is going to be Jason Day at 20-1. So this is kind of a weird setup for me this week is that all 3 of the guys I'm playing are 30-1 or less, which is the exact opposite of what my setup normally is, where I'm playing a lot of guys in the 50 to 100-1 range. But that's just the way the value worked out this week when I was making my own odds. So every week I go through.
It is very top heavy. There's so much country in the top, and even the bottom end is just even worse than usual.
Yeah, so like every week I'll go through, make my own odds, and then compare it to what the odds have in the market. And the only values I saw were at the top. So Jason Day's played this event the last I think 7 years. Finished sixth or better in five of those 7 years. So obviously he has an affinity for this event and this course. With it also, being a little bit of slow play in the pro-ams, he can be a little bit methodical, and I think that kind of plays into his hands a little bit, and doesn't necessarily mind that. And then he has one of the best short games around. So if this does turn into a putting contest, chipping contest, I like having Jason Day on my side there, right? He hasn't played a ton of golf late, but he did have a good finish. I think at Torrey a couple weeks ago, finished 16th. So you're giving me a guy who, in a weak field like this, at 20-1, in past years, he was much less than that. So I feel like I'm getting pretty good value at that. So, I mean, if you look at it last year, like what's changed from last year to this year? Jason Day last year was in his field. So was Dustin Johnson, right? Jason Day was 8-1 here last year. So why is he 20-1 this year, right? Is it been that much change in his game? I don't think so, right?
Is the field weaker? Like I don't necessarily specifically remember this event. Sure, I would.
Yeah, so if you're looking at the top players, the thing he believe it or not, it was a stronger field. The top 8 guys last year were DJ, Jason Day, Patrick Reed, Finau, Fleetwood, Casey, Mickelson, and Kuchar.
Right.
So in all actuality, like the top of the field is stronger than it was this year, and we're getting more than double the price on Jason Day. So that just does not make sense to me.
Yeah, and like you said, the short game is there for him.
Yeah.
The one thing with Day, obviously, is that his approach game seems to have left him a little bit. But it's all about health with him, and he seems to be getting healthier, and he's playing more. So that's, I hope he returns back. But like you said, like I said with Hovland, you're kind of banking on some regression back to his true talent, right?
Yeah, and one thing to know with it being a pro-am is that they keep the rough down. So the rough's only about 2 inches around all the courses. So you can spray the ball a little bit off the tee and still get away with it. Plus, the fact the courses aren't long, you don't have to hit driver, right? So you're gonna have a lot of short irons and wedges to where Day's biggest weakness is actually his mid irons. But he's a fairly decent wedge player. So if he's gonna have more wedges in there and he hits the ball long, sprays a little bit, but he can kind of get away with it. So it's one of those high upside plays.
Certainly.
So what's your next person that you bet here, Frank?
So my next guy, if we're moving down, is Russell Knox at 50-1. Just a guy that's trending in the right direction. He's not, outstanding in any single category. His approach play has been really good as of late. But typically, in the top 50, top 40 in most categories across the board. If you look at his recent finishes, T16, T21, T37, T32. So he's been a cut-making machine. He hasn't had that explosion quite yet. With that being said, with this weaker field, you see a guy that's consistently in the top 20, top 30. It's definitely a situation in which I think he could potentially shoot a low round in there somewhere and give himself a chance going into Sunday.
Yeah, Knox is definitely on a little bit of an upswing here, playing very well of late. Have you seen the changes that he's made to his swing and setup with all the increased distance?
I haven't, but I'm seeing it in my model.
No, so what he's done is he's basically worked with some consultants pretty much to get, I think it's with one of the long drive guys, to pretty much increase his distance. And so over the last 3 or 4 events, he's gaining 15 to 20 yards longer than what he was in the past, which for a guy who's very accurate and good with the rest of his game, he's always lost strokes off the tee because he hits it field average accuracy wise, but hits it 20 yards shorter than the normal player, it seems like, right? And so if he can get that distance up there, I think you're going to see his name on a lot of leaderboards in the top 20s this year.
Yeah, it's like a two-edged sword here. I'm just looking at his. It looks like he's gained 10 plus yards driving distance now that I'm looking at it. But it's a double-edged sword there, whereas if he's a club shorter in the greens, it's probably going to help his approach play, right?
Yep.
It's an interesting thing. And like you said, the rough being down here, maybe he can go after it a little bit more and get a couple more yards out of some drives. And then, his approach play has been so good recently that it's just allowing him to avoid any sort of blow up. So I think he's a very good play for, any sort of DFS lineups and stuff like that too, because he's been a cut making machine and a top 30 machine, all the way through.
Yeah, but the other thing, he's a very good wind player. So if it does get windy, which we tend to see here, on the ocean there, it kind of falls into his lap a little bit there. I'll definitely be looking to see what the top 20 and top 40 odds are for Knox, because he's just been so consistent. He's going to be up there towards the end of the week. So if we can get any decent odds on that, I'll probably be playing that. My next person off the board here is going to be one of the best putters and short game players in the field. It's going to be Brandt Snedeker, 25-1 here. This is another one where the odds just don't make sense based upon past years again. So that's one of the things I go through every year is, comparing it to past years in the fields and seeing, where the market is in previous years to this year. It just doesn't make sense that he's 25-1 in this field. He's played this event last 7 years. He's won it twice and finished fourth another time. He's come into this event. He obviously missed the cut last week in Phoenix, right? But before that, he finished third at Torrey and I think 12th at the Sony Open. So he's in good form. And, in prior years, he's just I don't get how a guy can win an event twice, be coming into the form good. And, in past years, we've seen him anywhere from, I think 12-1 to 40-1 here, which is just kind of all over the map, which I don't understand for a guy that can win this event. Not necessarily going away, but if he's in contention on Sunday, I'd favor him over a lot of everything but about DJ in this field. I'd favor him.
Yeah, and he's played well recently. Like you said, he missed the cut last week. Maybe getting a little bit better number. I think I think I was doing research this morning and I was interested in Brandt as well. But I think it was that he missed the cut last year, but all the previous years he was really, really good. I think that's great.
Yeah, he missed it. He missed the cut here last year, but then in 2018 finished 20th, and then fourth the year before. His wins were in 2013, 2015. But I mean, a missed cut here, with it being a small, 60-person cut isn't the end of the world. And just because a guy had one bad week doesn't mean that you're gonna, rule him out, right? I weight heavily more that the fact that he's played well here in other weeks than the fact that he had one bad week, right? You're looking for a propensity for upside in the outright market, and he has that.
And not that I put a lot of stock in this, but I've been listening about, grass types and green types on the green. I'm assuming that Pebble Beach, like a lot of other Cali places, is Poana, I would assume. And he does putt well at Poana, just like at Torrey. He tends to strike the ball a little bit more on the greens, which kind of lends itself to avoiding kind of that wiggle stuff that you get out of Poana.
Yeah, so if anybody's listening and trying to understand what different grass types are and what Poana is, so there's all kinds of different grass types. We'll talk about this maybe for a minute or just get a little bit of background because we always get questions on this. So there's 3 different more basic types of greens you'll end up seeing. You hear the words Poana, you'll hear bent grass, and you hear Bermuda, right? Bermuda grass is typically found in the South, like in Florida. It's very grainy, and by grainy that means is the way that the grass is growing will affect how a ball is rolling. So if the grass is growing one way, let's say it's growing right to left and your putts looks like it's going to go left to right. Well, it might be straight. And so guys, that grew up putting in Bermuda greens tend to putt well on Bermuda greens because their eyes are used to reading all the different variables. Bent grass greens tend to be quicker greens with minimal grain, found more like in the Midwest or Northeast. Easier to putt. But guys who have Bermuda, used to putting Bermuda, sometimes get tricked up by those greens. Then you have Poana, which basically it's kind of similar to bent grass greens there, to where the fact that they have these little poppy things that grow up in the afternoons. This may sound weird, but literally you'll see it zoomed in on coverage. In the afternoons, the greens grow, and they'll have these little things pop up in the greens that make them bumpy. So it's kind of like playing Price is Right Plinko on the greens. In the morning they're pure, but in the afternoon they kind of sprout up a little bit, just the way the grass is. Yeah. So people who are firmer or a little bit more of a poppier stroke with their putter tend to do well. And Snedeker's stroke, if you've watched, is this little short, compact, poppy stroke, and he hits his putt very firm. That's why he plays well, putts well on the green. That's why you also see Phil Mickelson putt well. Mickelson usually has a little shorter, poppier stroke and is very confident. Guys who are not confident on the greens will struggle. And all 3 of these courses are Poana greens, by the way.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I know that most of the West Coast on this swing tends to have that, and I know that Brandt always plays well through the stretch. Potentially that's why. I mean, he's not a great driver of the ball, but short game and his putting is where he's going to make all his money on these greens where he gains his strokes anyway.
Yep. So what's your next outright play then?
So yeah, moving down, my second favorite to Knox is Hoagie again this week. Just a guy that's, similar to Knox in that he's just trending in the right ways, right? Like he's gaining strokes on approach. This isn't a difficult driving, it's not going to be a difficult driving week, and he's been putting well. It's he missed 4 straight cuts, but since then he's gone T12, T6, 5th, and he was T25 last week. Probably could have been a little bit better, but he didn't play particularly well on Sunday. I think he shot even or something, or 1 over. But he's been there, and he's been flirting around with a win somewhere. It's like you said, there's not a lot of horses at the top here, and potentially we get someone like Hoagie that's just decent all around, and recently he's been really good compared to what we would expect from him. So his odds are starting to get down there. You're seeing him at 100 to 1 a few weeks ago. He's 80 to 1, and now he's down to 66 to 1. But I still think it's just a little bit cheap. I think he should be in that 50 to 1 range, with some other guys, and it's just purely because he's trending in the right ways. Particularly for this course as well.
Yep, that makes sense. Hoagie's trending in the right direction. I 100% agree with that. It would be interesting to see how he fares this week on a course where he hasn't had the best of luck in the past, but the way that he's playing, it's one of those that can kind of draw his courses.
He's a different golfer now, right? Like it's hard to say what someone else is going to do when they're starting to move in the correct directions, like Knox and Hoagie. They're both so similar, moving in the right way here.
Yep, exactly. So my last outright play of the week, believe it or not, is going to be Phil Mickelson. Getting 28 to 1 on him here. I make his true number about 16 to 1. It's just a number, it's one, it's just too high for me here. So the last 7 times he's played this event, he's finished first or second 4 times. That's 2 wins and 2 runner-up finishes. His wins coming in 2012 and 2019. If you just kind of look at his game, it's based upon, guess what? He sprays a little bit off the tee. That's okay on this courses, right? Because the rough is down a little bit, right? He's a very good wedge player. Going to have a lot of wedges, and is a really good short game, and putts really well in pulling greens. Fits him well. Also a guy who plays very relaxed in pro-am settings because he likes to BS around, shoot the ball with the people around in his groups, and just kind of sit back and have fun. And before you know it, he's up at the top of the leaderboard. If you're talking about his recent form, a lot of people may not realize, but he actually finished 3rd last week. Well, no, he didn't play in Phoenix. He played overseas in Saudi Arabia and finished 3rd. And the course in Saudi Arabia last week was, I'm going to say it's a similar course as the desert course, but in terms of course characteristics, you basically were able to spray the ball a little bit. It was a short course with a lot of wedges and a lot of birdies to be made. So that kind of translates to here, and he finished 3rd. So I know he's obviously traveling back. People worried about jet lag, but you're showing me a guy who's, won here, loves this course, and showed, a glimpse of form last week. 28 to 1 is just too high.
Yeah, I'm not going to dispute. I'm not going to argue with you. I just hate Phil's game.
And it's one of those, he's either going to miss the cut or he's going to top that. And there's nothing else is going to happen.
He's been so bad, and it's hard for me to subscribe to anyone that's been that bad. At his age, it would be one thing, like, we're seeing like Day, he hasn't been particularly great, from his health issues or whatever, but I just hate Phil. I don't, not even personally hate him. He hasn't finished in a PGA event better than 18th since he won here last year. And maybe it's just something about this event, of course, but I'm not going to be jumping on him. I'll tell you that, but I don't necessarily blame you for jumping on him if he didn't
finish 3rd last week, I would not have been playing him this week.
Yeah, and perhaps that's a sign, like you said, that he's definitely like a form player as well. Like he starts to trend, and then he crashes, and then he trends and crashes. So I'm just not going to sign on to Phil this week personally. But I don't blame those that do, because he loves it here, obviously.
Okay, so now we've kind of gone through and tossed out 3 outrights a piece. Is there any other bets you want to talk about, whether it's like top 20s or head-to-heads or anything like that?
Yeah, I've got some head-to-heads out there. The one I really like is Kevin Na plus 123 against Rafa Cabrera. Bello hasn't been he hasn't been that great. T56 overseas last week. He missed the cut the week before, and he did T12 2 weeks prior. But he's going to be traveling, I'm assuming, this week to California to play here. And Kevin Na played last week. He missed the cut, but prior to missing the cut last week, He won the Shriners, T20, T46, T32, T17, and a T14 at the Greenbrier. He's been pretty good. It's probably a little bit better than what we've seen from Na. Even just I know he randomly wins every now and again when he putts like crazy, but as an underdog, I think it's plus 123 against Rafa. It just, I don't know. I think that's a little bit too high. I think it should be closer to pick him with those two guys. Rafa is the better talent, no doubt. I would say Na is maybe just in a much better situation, and he's playing over here, and and he has been playing events here. So I'm going to take the 123 there.
Yeah, I was on the opposite end of the spectrum this matchup. This almost was a play for me on Bayo. This is just, if the line was about 5 cents cheaper on Bayo, I actually would have been betting Bayo in this case over Na. And there's a couple reasons for it. Not trying to go against you in every play here, but Bayo has specifically said that this is his favorite course to play in the world. And so you have a guy who's specifically traveling here to play because he loves this course that much. And so that's not necessarily a narrative. That's just a guy who cherishes the opportunity to play a course like this. And that's shown in the last 2 times he's played here. I think he's finished 22nd and 24th. He's a very, very good ball striker. Should be, very consistent to make. I would expect to make a cut here. I know he hasn't played that well over in the Middle East last couple of weeks, but Kevin Na hasn't been playing that great that year either. And I would say Na has a greater propensity to blow up than Bayo because we've seen Na withdraw due to injuries and some of that. So that has to get factored in head-to-head. So there's probably a 5 or 10% chance that Na either withdraws or just blows up so bad that the matchup is kind of just over. And that's enough to where if you factor that in, you're now looking at a coin flip. And in a coin flip, I would favor Bayo over on Na.
Same letter.
Yeah, same letter. It's just I palindromed it. So.
What's your matchup this week? What do you
Yeah, so I've bet a bunch of matchups already. One of them that was interesting to note was going to be Daniel Berger over Jordan Spieth. And so obviously, Spieth's played great here in the past, with a win in 2017. He struggled of later the last couple of years. The one thing to note, he obviously missed the cut last week, I think 55th at Tour before that, is the swing changes that he's making right now. So I don't know if you've seen the changes that he's made to his grip or heard about this. Okay. So what Spieth is doing, he's basically adjusting his right hand on his grip, especially with his thumb and the positioning on it, to basically allow him to hit a little bit more consistent, ball striking and the ability to work the ball both ways. And the reason he's doing that is basically trending towards the Masters in April. And so typically whenever golfers are making adjustments, especially to their grip or something that's part of their fundamentals, is that golfer will struggle for about 3 to 4 events until it catches on. The same thing is true in other sports. It's like a basketball player or a football player changing their mechanics. A football player trying to, change the way he throws the ball. Well, if he's trying to think about mechanics, 1, he's not going to be playing well. 2, if it's under pressure, you're going to end up finding, like for a basketball player, if he's trying to work on a certain way he's shooting, right? It's going to go from, okay, here's the way he used to shoot to the way he wants to shoot. It's going to be somewhere in the middle, and those fundamentals are going to be flawed at that point. Would you agree with that assessment?
Oh, yeah.
In other sports, right? So the same thing here is he's going to be trying to make a change, and that change is not going to be – might be working great in the practice range, but when you get it under pressure competition, you're going to see errant shots. Now, sure, he's one of the best putters and chippers in the world, but if you're telling me the guy's going through swing changes, I'm going to play somebody against them all the time in head-to-head because the market still is overvaluing speed. This reminds me of like when Tiger Woods came back and he was still 30-1 in every event, but he was like missing, being injured with his back injuries, right? Like the market just has him there because of his name, right?
Yeah.
If you showed me his resume, he would be, instead of being 40-1 this week, he'd be 90 or 100-1.
And Spieth has just been so bad in general. I mean, even prior to this, but having played a lot of sports and now being a frequent golfer, it seems like to me mechanic changes in golf more than any other sport affect you poorly until you kind of, like you said, a couple of weeks until you get used to it and really rep it out. Because in a lot of other sports, even just pitching, you can let kind of like your athleticism take over a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Like there's like it in basketball and things like that, there is a level of athleticism that in golf, you're standing over a ball and you have to strike the ball within perfect launch and face angle conditions to get to go straight, so it's just a particular difference. For me on the data side, it's tough for me to nail down Berger because, he has been out and injured, and he's come back this year, and T23, T18, T17, T38, T29, and T9 last week. I mean, he's another guy that's like really trending nicely, and I'm seeing the numbers start to move his way on my end. So yeah, I like that play a lot. I just like Spieth has just been so bad, and until he actually proves that he can, even get close to winning again, I would like to see that. He has been a little bit better in the new season, but he's nowhere near, even top 10 in the world, I think, right now. Not even close.
No, not even close. I'd say he's closer to, outside the top 100 than I think he's actually right around like maybe 50th, somewhere just outside that, I think. So
yeah.
It'll be interesting because I think right now he'd actually be outside some of the window for some of the major champions. I have to look into it a little bit more, but I think he'd be outside like the US Open and stuff.
I don't know what exemptions and shit he has too. So
yeah. So is there any other bets you wanted to cover this week, or any final comments?
No. So I've got another outright out there, and a few more matchups this week. Pretty light card overall, but you can get all of our bets up at EliteSportsBetting.com. Me and Paulie will both be posted up there. I posted this morning. Most of the numbers should still hang around. If you have any questions, just reach out to me. And back-to-back weeks with winners. Let's do it again.
Yep, that sounds good. Yep, all my outrights and head-to-heads are currently up there as well. I'll have all my other bets up there posted later today as folks post the rest of their betting options. So if you head over there, you'll be able to check out anything. We have a chat room over there as well. And if you have any questions, once again, you can hit me or Frank up on Twitter. We're very responsive, and we'll look forward to catching a winner this week, and we'll be back here next week for Riviera. So with that being said, thanks for joining us again today, Frank.
Yeah, thank you, man. See you.